When we pull the loom through into the cabin, we're going to have to find a switched ignition positive to connect power to the circuits. I've soldered on a let's call it a pigtail of red ignition switch positive, and all I've done is I've teed into the wiring loom, and then I'm going to close it up here again so that when we get behind the dash we'll find a switched ignition wire and then we'll connect to that. This is now the EGR plate we're going to be fitting. So what I want to do is go ahead and just doing outside of the vehicle is very convenient and a lot easier. So I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to put a thread locker on. You can do this while the plate is in place. It's just a whole lot easier to do it on the bench. As you tighten, it gets tighter and tighter. Again, you don't want to strip the actual fitting. You just need it to be good and secure in its spot. What we want to do is put a little bit of fire gum or exhaust gum paste on the actual plate so that it doesn't leak. All right, and the reason why we had to helicoil this or have it helicoiled is because of rust. So we give a good little layer to these bolts. I've just put the one in place just to hold the plate while I'm doing the other. This thing just needs to be good and snug and do the job. We're now going to put the probe into its fitting, and making note, I mentioned earlier there's a little compression olive. It must be there, otherwise the probe will never tighten down and it'll just pop out. So we're going to mount the probe, and it doesn't have to be all the way into the depths of it. The thing is, on the Td5, the belt comes very close to the thing, so I'm going to put it deeper than I normally would, but you definitely don't want to touch metal. If it's touching metal, you're going to get an incorrect signal. You can bend the probe body if you absolutely have to. I prefer not to if it's possible. You don't tighten it to death. The intention here is to compress that compression olive so that it pinches against the shaft of the temperature sender and holds it in place nicely. So and there we go. So I'm going to bend it up just slightly just to get it out of the way. Just a little bit of clearance around the belt. The belt is going to clear anyway, but I'm just giving it a bit more. The other thing that I recommend doing is, a common failure point in these probes is where the stainless steel braid enters the probe. The constant pulling as your engine moves, that forward and backwards motion, eventually causes or can cause a failure point in that. So I give a little bit of slack, and you don't want to go against the grain of the probe. So I make a small loop in my sender's cable to allow for play, and it puts no stress on the sender. So we will put everything together now, but there you can see nicely what's involved in the install. You can see at the end of the day we've got a single harness that goes to all the points. The harness actually goes in this way, runs along the firewall. I've marked the things: oil pressure down to oil temperature, boost pressure and water temperature. We're now going to permanently install the harness. So boost pressure on, water temperature sender, water level sender, and we're going to connect our earth wire avoid the exhaust temperature, so we route the wires a little as best as we can away from the area of the exhaust. This earth connection is so important. It's got to be solid, it's got to be secure, it's got to be good. Oil temperature must go down. The firewall, follow the factory loom that we discussed already. Okay, and for the last time we're going to connect the transfer case oil temperature, and then we'll go back now and we'll cable tie all of these in place so they don't flop around, and they follow the factory wiring loom. The oil pressure switch, this one takes a lot of heat, so we're going to put a second sleeve on here just to try dissipate or try to keep some of the heat away from this core. Heat wrap or something, you can put that on the wires as well. That will also be excellent. But there we're going. We will route it as close as possible or as far as possible away from the exhaust as we can, because it does get very hot. You don't want cables and flapping around while you're driving. Just use available spots, convenient spots on the vehicle as well, no problem. As far as is reasonably possible, use the factory wiring, travel the factory wiring positions and secure onto those. Right, water hose is on, other water hose is on, the main water hose is on. We've bolted down the aircon, plugged it in, done all of the terminals, connected that, we've cable tied all of that. We are going to go take our harness and our EGT probe through the factory grommet. It is quite busy. There's lots of things running through and in and out. We've got a spot here next to the water below this little grey wire, and we'll go in there. I'll make a little slice with the blade. The Stanley knife can't make it past the harness and the blade, so I've already made an incision, and you've got to be very careful here. You're going to go cut through other wires if you're not careful. All right, now we've got to go inside and open up the dash. There's nothing we need in the cluster, but we've got to be able to reach in and pull the wires. You may want to not unplug some of the electronics in the car, simply because you might get an error fault code on the system. Behind this air vent is actually where we're going to come through with our pull through. So the way we get it to slide through is you spray lubricant spray otherwise it fouls up on the rubber. And also, when you're doing this, you have to make sure that you haven't looped around any other component in the car by mistake, and you end up having to pull it all back through again. Right, now what we need to do is find a switched positive connection and then feed our cable through the dash to get to the pod, which we'll mount at the top here. You can do this with a multimeter. This is more simple than a multimeter. It's just looking for a 12 volt signal. So I just want to probe that any of these are permanent 12 volts. Okay, and then we turn we don't want to turn it on. We turn the ignition to the on position. That's not 12 volts. That doesn't give me 12 volts. That doesn't give me 12 volts. That's 12 volts, but I don't want to tap into the actual ignition barrel wire. It's just wrong. Another group of relays. We'll just probe these ones. Nope. That's 12 volts. Turn the key off small. Okay, turn it on. Okay, that's a switch 12 volt. You can cut the wire. I prefer to join it with one of these splice joints. Gave myself way too much battery positive wire for just in case. And we're going to tap in here, and I close it off, and it's a safe, neat, closed solution. If we have got power and earth as we should have, when I turn the car on, this should spring to life and say something, which it is. So we'll set up the calibration in a minute, but I just wanted to confirm that my unit has power. Okay. So for our application, the pod that we're using is too shallow for the bracket to be used and even to be fitted, and these mounting bolts or these tightening bolts stick out. So we're going to undo it. It's a little 7mm nuts. Just take those out. We're going to put that aside. I need to just start loosening this while it's still on the Madman. Open these two screws in the back of the Madman. Take the Madman apart. And if you ever wondered what goes on inside of the Madman, a lot of electricity. Be careful when you do this, that you don't crack the housing. And then we're going to reassemble the Madman. It press fits into a 52mm housing, and you don't actually need anything to hold it in place for the average user. If it does start to wiggle around at all in your application, just slide the Madman unit out and put one layer of electrical tape around the edge and reinsert. You'll find that that probably fixes the problem. Let's head back and look at mounting this thing on the dash. What we do is we put double-sided tape on it, trim it nicely, clean it with benzene, and you clean the mounting surface with benzene. It doesn't take much movement, and then the unit itself is very light, so it's usually sufficient to hold it down. We run the wire through, and then we press fit the Madman in. Oh, this is a good example of one that's loose. So we will definitely wrap this one with a bit of electrical tape. That'll be a nice, I don't want to push it in now, but that'll be a nice snug fit when I finally fit it. And you can see it's not all the way in, and you can see the screws would be touching. It would be very difficult to get that bracket if not impossible. And then you still have to get the wiring harness, the plug in the back of it as well. So this way for a DIY is just honestly much easier. Because I need to have a cable entry, I'm going to burr out a small little section. You do have to be careful of your haste here, because a slipped finger could result in a very badly placed hole that you didn't want. Excess plastic burr.
Hi, it's Brian from Madman Developments here. Our products are made in South Africa and available to everyone around the world. We have an online shop and warehouse in South Africa selling to the world, and a dedicated shop and warehouse in the USA for the Americas. Go to madmandevelopments.com for all the information you need, including shops and contact details for sales and technical assistance.